So the passage I read is rich, and then your addition to it provides more. And then other passages read are also similarly rich.
Yes.
How does one know when you've read? If I read 30 pages of Shaw, I like The Commanding Self, I can be sure that when I walk away in 10 minutes, there's no way all of that stuff is top of mind.
Why does it need to be top of mind?
Right. So that's my question is, can one be reading? Well, of course one can be reading too much. The question is,
I don't know very many people in danger of that except for maybe me. No, but there's others like me. And that's only because, a book is such a paltry thing compared to, a tree or a bird or a leaf on the ground. You feel somewhat guilty because the intellect is only good for so little, right? And ultimately the intellect is nothing at all. But in my case, the way I rationalize it is that I'm trying to teach, right? And so I have to kind of know methods of teaching across the ages and what might work in our current circumstances. But that's, something of a rationalization, I suppose. For example, Krishnamurti didn't read it all, right? And it shows in his teaching.
Well,
I mean, he just blurts it out. The observer is the observed, but he doesn't. He says it leaves it to other people to get you to a point where you can understand what that means, right? But that was him, right? And I'm very glad that he did what he did because he's been very, very helpful to many people. And later, people will generally understand what he's saying, and it'll be a different situation. But for now, it's hard for the beginning student to grok much of what he's saying, except that he uses the words beautiful and love and all this stuff that attracts people, and that's okay. In his case, I think that's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to second guess Krishnamurti, but I'm pointing to the limitations for early students in his work. That's not where I would start.
Right. You said, and I didn't follow up, but I would like to, why does the stuff you read need to be necessarily top of mind? Could you describe that a bit more for people, including myself, who read 30 to 50 pages, ingest these materials, and then say, oh no, I feel like I've forgotten it all, or it's not, I don't know if it's working or if it's operating.
If you've absorbed it, it still takes time to digest. And I remember very clearly, I would describe one of my experiences early on, or fairly early on. I remember walking down a sidewalk. I just bought some things at Trader Joe's. And what story was it? It was something about a cherry, it was a cherry bomb, basically, that went off in my head. I just out of nowhere, I understood one of the stories, right? At a completely different level. And it was just mind-boggling. And so, no, you're not going to absorb these things completely, but you should. So let's go back to my answer and see if it's okay. What was my answer to you on Twitter?
For materials or contemplation or experience?
To read the whole thing, and then we can see if I've...
Okay. And responding to how can we best absorb what is in materials and experiences, you said, for core materials, it's simple. Read until understanding, wait, repeat. Integrate with a level of understanding, wait, repeat from different angles. For experience, contemplation, integration with discursive understanding, integration with non-discursive understanding, Now it's knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, that's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's very, very abbreviated. I mean, I hope the implication is you should only read things twice, because there's some books that you won't read twice, so you'll read it for the rest of your life. I'm thinking now the Tao Te Ching. There's some books that you'll read repeatedly, and they'll mean something very different when you're 30 than when you're 40 or 50, right? And now I'm thinking of the Sufi texts, right? And then there's Don Juan, which, you know, if you've read it, you've kind of read it. You know, the Castaneda books.
Yeah.
And you may refer back, right? But you've got the idea that there's many ways to approach to the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So with the beggar story, when you see it illustrated in your life, when you run into somebody who's a miser and who's missing the whole point of his life because he worships money, not even for its utility, not even for its the good that it can do, but just for its own sake. And then that man dies. And you're going to feel something. If you know anything, you'll feel something for that poor man. Because he's died not having digested the teaching, which is basically the same thing as not having it at all. I don't know if that makes sense, but it may make sense later.
No, that does make sense. And the cherry bomb thing, I just had one go off the other day.
That's the great thing about the
they
mullah.
just happen. It was mullah too. Yeah, it's more often than not. It's
the mullah is. I can't describe how extraordinary the mullah is. And so, yeah, you read those jokes, you laugh at some of them, most of them maybe. And then you live your life, and then you see them acted out in your own mind and in others. And you go, wow. And then it becomes knowledge. When you know how vulnerable you are and other people are to the same thing, then it becomes knowledge, right? You don't have to think about it anymore. You know.
Yeah. And this was a mullah story that I don't think I've read in at least a couple months or a few months.
Right. So the mullah is different, somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. I try and get people to read just a short little joke book. And kids don't want to read. And it's tragic. Because it's important. We have no other means by which to instruct yet, right? And this has been true for a long, long time.
I'd like to see the Taoist TikTokers.
That's an interesting contemplation. I haven't even thought about that. But, I mean, I don't know what Taoists would do with that. Probably just say... Probably, I don't know. I have to think about that. But people need to. Okay, I can say this: the AIs are designed to capture you, and to hold you, and to use you. And if you think you're going to be able to withstand an AI algorithm in any meaningful way, you should really examine the reality. And so here you could use some discursive understanding and know what A/B testing is, know what this is way beyond A/B testing. They're looking at how long you gaze at an image, and then later it'll be where on the image do your eyes go, right? So people don't understand what's being done to them en masse, you know. ENMASS, I think it is, you know, and as a totality, right? And people are being used and enslaved and then manipulated for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes round and round and round. Well, where does this end? It doesn't end well. And the individual who doesn't realize this, I feel I feel very great, compassion and pity for, because they're going to lose the only thing that matters, which is their life. And you could breathe and walk around, but if you're a miser, or its equivalent, it's something else, you're going to miss the whole thing. And there's no greater tragedy. So you can do it quick with fentanyl, or you can do it slowly, or have it done to you by the AIs. But that's what's happening. There's no regard for it anymore for the ordinary man or woman. And you can just look around and you can see it. So there's another way where you can look, you can contemplate, you could observe and digest, and so on and so forth. And then it's knowledge. But it's good to focus on the text right now, because this is the most efficient way. Otherwise, you're going to spend literally decades, and even then, you may not get anywhere. And I see kids go into, these weekend retreats, or they go to month-long meditation intensives or whatever. And I'm not saying they don't learn to meditate, so that's good. But there's other parts that have to be done too.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, that's all they do. They spend a lifetime wandering around following gurus, this one, that one, or they find one and they get fixated on that one. And this is a very common thing. But the teacher is really right outside your window. Or it's not even outside your window. It's in the room with you. All things are teaching at all times. And so most of this work is like teaching what it is to be a student.
Yeah.
And we have to start at square one, because people don't know what it is to be a student. And they think it's like a hobby or something, or a pill, or a miracle cure for their suffering. But that's not how it works. This beautiful cardinal has come back, and I don't know what red you would name the color after the bird, not the other way around.
Right.
If you had to name it at all. And so, in nature especially is teaching, but it's hard for people to see. And I remember it being difficult, because we've learned to just label it and call it, oh, well, that's a cardinal, right? But not understand what that cardinal actually is. What is it really? This creature with a heart and warmth and some intelligence, right? And some consciousness as well. So when you contemplate what that is in the larger scheme of things, and even in the smaller scheme of things, you start to see some of the mystery and the power and the glory of this heaven we're living in. And so it's created like this for a reason, but we've turned our back on it. And there's no greater tragedy than that for a civilization or for a person. I'm starting to get preachy. I should stop. So yeah, you don't want to preach, but but you do want to point, and then you point, and so then you try and explain as best you can. So I hope some of this is at least has been helpful.